Donald John Trump was a name that millions would one day recognize across America and around the world, yet very few people truly understood the journey behind that name, the journey of a boy who grew up in Queens and carried inside him a strange, heavy fire, a desire to do something so big that even he could not fully explain it in the beginning. He was not a billionaire, he was not a television star, he was not a political figure. He was simply a kid who asked too many questions and dreamed too loudly. His teachers used to say that he was bold and restless. He wanted to know how people became great, how they built massive towers, how they created businesses that shaped entire cities while other kids played in the yard. Trump stood near the windows, imagining huge buildings touching the sky. He felt something inside him, a voice that said, "You are not meant to live a small life. You are not meant to follow the crowd. You are meant to build something that lasts." Growing up, his father began taking him to construction sites at a young age. Trump watched workers lay bricks, mix cement, load trucks, follow schedules, argue, fix problems, and keep going through heat and cold. He learned that business was not just money. Business was pressure, sweat, planning, courage, and the ability to rise after falling again and again. He saw how buildings were not just structures, they were dreams turned solid. In college, he was not just another student. He was already thinking like a businessman. While others wrote essays, he was calculating real-world scenarios, imagining profits, losses, risks, and results. He would sit with his professors and ask questions that made them shake their heads, wondering where this kind of mindset came from. His friends found him strange, but Trump simply said, "One day you will remember my name." After graduating, he decided he would not walk the usual path. He did not want to manage a small family business forever. He wanted to expand it. He wanted to step out of Queens and enter Manhattan, the heart of New York, the place where the giants of real estate lived and ruled. But getting into Manhattan was a battle. It was full of legendary developers, huge companies, and men with deep pockets and powerful connections. But Trump said, if the mountain is high, that only means the view from the top is greater. His first move into Manhattan almost collapsed before it began. Banks doubted him, developers laughed, investors ignored him. People said, this young man from Queens will break under pressure, Manhattan will eat him alive. But Trump refused to retreat. He stepped forward every single day. He was bold, confident, and unshaken. He believed that if he could convince one person, one bank, one partner, he could change his entire future. There was an old hotel in the middle of the city, a property people called hopeless, a broken building full of problems. Everyone said it was impossible to fix, a complete waste of money, a guaranteed failure. Trump looked at it differently. Where others saw darkness, he saw a chance to shine. He said, if I can transform this place, I will prove what I am capable of. He began meeting investors, negotiating day and night, pushing through rejection after rejection. He talked to banks. He studied every detail of the property. He created a plan that shocked even experienced developers. People thought he was foolish, ambitious, or simply out of his mind. But Trump arrived at the site every morning before anyone else. He watched the workers. He checked the foundation. He stood in the dust and noise like a man who already saw the building finished in his imagination. When the project finally opened, New York was stunned. Newspapers wrote about it. Business people whispered about it. Critics who once laughed went silent. The transformation was huge. The impossible building had become Trump's first major victory. He had taken a dying property and turned it into a symbol of success. And suddenly people began to understand that this young man was not ordinary. He took risks that others feared, and he did not apologize for dreaming big. But life does not stay on top forever. The wheel always turns, and soon Trump faced the darkest storm of his career. Multiple projects were crushed by a weak economy. Loans piled up. Banks demanded payments. Media shouted that Trump was finished. Headlines screamed that he was going bankrupt. Many said his empire was collapsing right before his eyes. They said he would never return. But Trump believed something different. He believed a man falls only when he accepts defeat, and Trump refused to accept anything close to defeat. He woke up early every morning. He fought every battle. He attended meeting after meeting. He restructured deals, renegotiated loans, convinced partners, and endured public attacks. But he never allowed fear to take over. One night, he sat alone in his office. While the city lights shined outside the window, the whole world seemed calm except his mind that was full of pressure and questions. He wondered if he could rebuild everything, if he could rise again, if he could prove everyone wrong once more. And in that quiet moment, a voice inside him whispered, "You are the man who refuses to fall. You will rise again." And he decided he would rise. Trump began rebuilding his empire piece by piece. While the world watched closely, some were waiting for him to fail, others were waiting to see if he would pull off another miracle. Every meeting he walked into felt like a battlefield. He had to convince people who no longer believed in him. He had to prove that he still had the strength and strategy to turn everything around. And Trump loved pressure. He fed off it. He treated it like fuel. He reorganized his companies, he cut unnecessary expenses, he found new partners, he restructured loans, he revived projects that everyone had given up on. He traveled across cities, meeting bankers, lawyers, investors, and builders. Sometimes he barely slept, sometimes he barely ate. But he kept moving forward with a stubborn force that surprised even his critics. He believed that momentum was everything. Once you stop, you are finished. But as long as you move even an inch forward, you are alive. There were moments when he stood in half-finished buildings imagining floors that did not exist, yet he walked through open spaces where walls had not been built. He pointed and said, "This will be a ballroom, this will be a luxury suite, this will be a restaurant, this will be the greatest view in the entire city." People around him stared, confused, wondering how he saw something that they could not see. Trump had the ability to visualize success long before it appeared in the real world, and that gift became his weapon. Slowly, very slowly, his project started to come back to life. The same investors who once walked away now returned, asking if they could work with him again. Banks that once doubted him now began to trust his strategies again. The media that predicted his downfall had to cover his recovery, because America loves a comeback, and Trump was giving them one of the biggest comebacks they had ever seen. People forget that success often comes from surviving storms, not from avoiding them. Trump faced storms that could have destroyed him forever, but he refused to bend, he refused to hide, he refused to let fear define his next move. Instead, he treated every failure like a lesson, every crisis like fuel, and every attack like motivation to rise higher. But as his business world revived, something new began forming around him, a different kind of fame, a louder one, a more dramatic one. Trump the businessman slowly transformed into Trump the brand. He was not just building properties anymore, he was building an identity, an image, a signature. He wanted his name to represent luxury, power, and confidence, and he pursued that vision with the same intensity he used in real estate. Then came a moment that changed everything, a television opportunity that would introduce him to millions of Americans. The Apprentice, a show that turned Trump into a household name, a man who sat in a large office, who made decisions, who challenged contestants, and who had a presence that captured the attention of viewers across the country. Audiences loved him, some hated him, some admired him, some criticized him, but everyone watched him, and that was powerful. The show exploded in popularity, becoming a cultural phenomenon. People quoted him, people joked about him, people debated his style. But above all, people saw him as a symbol of authority and success. He became larger than life, his catchphrase became iconic, and suddenly, he was not just a businessman, he was a public figure with influence that went far beyond real estate. This new level of fame changed everything. His name became a brand that sold buildings, hotels, clothing, and more. When people walked into a Trump hotel, they expected a certain experience, and Trump made sure they got it: elegance, gold shine, and an atmosphere of power. He traveled around the world, opening new properties, signing deals, and expanding his empire beyond what anyone had imagined for a kid from Queens. But fame is a double-edged sword. It brings admiration and attention, but it also brings criticism, controversy, and constant spotlight. Every move Trump made, every statement he gave, every project he started became news. People analyzed him, judged him, praised him, attacked him, but Trump remained unfazed. He liked the noise. He believed that silence was the enemy, and attention was the currency of modern power. At the peak of this new fame, he found himself at a crossroads. He had conquered real estate, he had conquered television, he had conquered branding, but something inside him whispered that there was one more mountain left, one more challenge that almost everyone believed he could never succeed at, a challenge so huge that even people close to him thought it was impossible. But Trump had built his entire life on doing the impossible, and the idea began to grow in his mind slowly, like a spark turning into a flame. That idea was politics, and once the thought entered his mind, it refused to leave. It sat there growing stronger every day until he finally decided to take the step that shocked America and the world. The day Donald Trump stepped onto the stage and announced that he was entering the political arena, a shockwave moved through America. People stared at their screens, unsure whether to laugh or take him seriously. Some said it was a publicity stunt. Some said it was a joke. Some said he would never make it past the first week. But Trump stood straight and confident, the same way he did when he walked into Manhattan for the first time with everyone betting against him. He looked out at the crowd and felt something he had always believed in deep inside his heart, that he was meant to attempt things others considered impossible. The reaction across the country was instant, and explosive supporters cheered, critics mocked, commentators filled television screens with opinions and predictions. But all of it only fueled Trump. He understood something very few people ever understand: attention is not the enemy, confusion is not the enemy, doubt is not the enemy. The real enemy is being ignored, and Trump had never been ignored a single day of his adult life. As he moved into debates, interviews, and rallies, he brought with him a style no one had seen before. He spoke with confidence, without hesitation, without fear. He did not act like a politician because he had never been one. He acted like a businessman addressing a nation the same way he would address a boardroom: direct, loud, bold, and unapologetic. And it created a reaction the country had never experienced. Crowds grew larger every week. People waited for hours just to see him speak. Some came to support, some came out of curiosity, some came because they could not believe what they were watching. But no matter why they came, they listened. And Trump knew how to hold a crowd in the palm of his hand the same way he held investors, bankers, and businessmen years earlier when he fought to save his empire. Behind the scenes, things were intense. His days were long and heavy: meetings, strategy sessions, constant travel, interviews, and the constant pressure of public spotlight. He faced criticism from every direction. Experts said he had no chance. Politicians laughed at the idea that he could go further. Media attacked him constantly, but Trump had lived his entire life inside storms. This was not new to him. Criticism was simply noise, and noise had never stopped him before. He traveled across the country, visiting states he had never visited before, stepping onto stages in small towns and large cities, meeting people from different backgrounds and listening to their stories. And he realized something that surprised even him: people were frustrated, people felt unheard, people felt forgotten. And Trump saw an opportunity, not for business, but for something bigger: a chance to use his voice, his platform, and his energy to represent those who felt left behind. Every rally felt bigger than the last. Every event felt louder. The air was charged with tension, excitement, hope, anger, frustration, and curiosity. Trump stood in the center, absorbing all of it, turning the energy into momentum, into motion, into a movement. And that movement kept growing like a wave, building strength, ready to crash into the entire political system. While he spoke publicly with fire behind closed doors, he worked tirelessly, studying, learning, meeting advisors, analyzing maps and numbers. He approached the election like it was a massive business deal, and he believed that if he worked harder, thought bigger, and pushed further than anyone else, he could win, something even experts thought was impossible. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. The entire world watched the election unfold. Every headline, every broadcast, every conversation kept repeating the same question: could Donald Trump actually win? And while many dismissed the possibility, Trump believed in it with the same certainty he had when he looked at broken buildings and saw skyscrapers that no one else could see. Then came the night that would change everything: the night of the election, the night when millions sat glued to their screens waiting for results that seemed to defy every prediction. The atmosphere was electric, tense, unpredictable. Every state felt like a turning point. Every count felt like a battle unfolding on live television. And as the numbers rolled in, the disbelief grew louder across the country and across the world. Because something was happening that almost no one expected. As the election night continued, the map of the United States began to shift in ways that stunned analysts and shocked commentators. States that were expected to stay blue began turning red. States that experts claimed were impossible for Trump to win suddenly leaned in his favor. The room where his team watched the results flicker across the screen was filled with a strange mix of tension and electricity. The kind of feeling that builds right before a miracle or a catastrophe. No one knew which one it would be, but Trump stood steady, his eyes sharp, focused, determined. Reporters on television struggled to explain what was happening. They kept repeating the same line over and over: this was not supposed to happen. Polls had predicted a different story. Experts had promised a different outcome, but the numbers were changing, and they were changing fast. And every time a state flipped in his direction, the air across the country shifted a little more, like a massive storm gathering strength. People in his campaign headquarters looked at him, waiting for a reaction, but Trump simply nodded, as if he had expected this moment all along. He had walked into Manhattan when everyone doubted him. He had rebuilt his empire when everyone counted him out. And now he was standing on the edge of a victory that almost no one believed he could reach. His life had been built on defying expectations, and tonight was becoming another chapter in that pattern. Across America, people watched in disbelief. Some celebrated, some cried, some sat in silence, unable to process what they were witnessing. But whether they loved him or hated him, they could not deny what was unfolding. The billionaire from Queens, the real estate developer turned television personality, was climbing state by state toward the highest office in the country, a path no one had imagined years earlier. As the hours passed, the tension climbed higher. The world held its breath. Cities around the globe watched the results and waited. The streets where quiet televisions glowed. In dark living rooms, people whispered, argued, cheered, or froze in shock. The entire planet felt locked in one moment, one decision, one unbelievable turn of events. And in the center of that chaos, Trump remained unmoved, almost calm, like a man watching the fulfillment of a destiny he had seen long before anyone else. Then came the announcement, the moment that split the night open. A network called another major state for Trump, then another. A wave of red stretched across the map. And suddenly the path became clear. The numbers lined up, the predictions shifted, and the words that many believed would never be spoken were finally said. Trump had won enough states to secure the victory. The room around him erupted. His team shouted, hugged, laughed, cried. Some stared at the screen, unable to speak. But Trump stood still for a moment, letting the weight of what had happened settle into his mind. He had climbed from the bottom of business failure, survived bankruptcy, rebuilt an empire, turned his name into a global brand, conquered television, and now he had done something almost unimaginable. He had won the presidency of the United States. When he finally stepped out to address the world, his voice carried a calm, controlled tone. He spoke not as a businessman, not as a celebrity, but as a man who understood the magnitude of the moment. The journey from Queens to that stage had been unbelievable, a story no writer could invent, a story so improbable that people would have laughed at it if it were fiction, yet it was real and unfolding in front of millions. But behind that victory lay the same truth that had guided him his entire life, the truth that shaped his every rise, every fall, and every comeback. The belief that no matter how dark the moment, no matter how heavy the pressure, no matter how loud the criticism, a man is not defeated until he stops fighting, and Trump had never stopped fighting. As he left the stage that night, stepping into a new chapter of his life, he knew that the challenges ahead would be bigger than anything he had faced before. He knew the spotlight would be harsher, the criticism louder, the expectations sky high. But he also knew that his entire life had been a preparation for moments like these, battles, storms, pressure, mountains that seemed impossible until he climbed them. And now he was about to climb the biggest mountain of all. The morning after the election, the world woke up to a reality that felt unreal to many. Donald Trump was now the president-elect of the United States, a transition unlike anything modern America had witnessed before. People filled the streets with mixed emotions. Some celebrated with flags and cheers, while others stood in disbelief, trying to understand how a man who had never held political office had just won the most powerful position in the country. But Trump himself approached the new day with the same sharp focus he carried throughout his life. His victory was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a far tougher road. As he entered meetings with advisors and officials, he understood that the world he was stepping into was far different from real estate or television. The challenges were bigger, the stakes were higher, and every decision would echo across the globe. He listened carefully, absorbing information at a rapid pace, asking questions, pushing for clarity, and studying every detail. He treated the presidency with the same serious intensity he gave to his biggest business deals. Inside the White House, preparations began. Teams moved through hallways, setting up offices, organizing files, planning schedules, and creating strategies, while the press outside waited for every possible update. Every movement was covered, every announcement analyzed, every step broadcasted across screens nationwide. Yet Trump stayed focused. He knew the spotlight was brighter than ever before, but he had spent decades in light far too bright to fear it now. In private moments, he reflected on his journey. From Queens to the highest office in America, he remembered standing on construction sites covered in dust, negotiating deals in tiny offices, walking through unfinished buildings, fighting to save his empire from collapse, facing headlines that predicted his downfall. He remembered the nights when he sat alone wondering if he could rise again, and now he stood on the edge of a chapter that no businessman had ever written for himself. As Inauguration Day approached, Washington, D.C. transformed. Thousands gathered, some in excitement, some in protest, some simply to witness history unfolding. The city felt like a stage, buzzing with anticipation. Trump arrived, carrying the same confidence he had in every defining moment of his life. Yet, He felt the weight of the moment, the cold air, the massive crowds, the sound of voices stretching across the National Mall. Everything seemed larger, louder, heavier than anything before. When he placed his hand on the Bible and took the oath, the world watched every second. Political experts tried to interpret his expression. Supporters listened with hope. Critics analyzed his tone, but Trump stood steady, knowing that history was recording this moment, a moment built not only by ambition but by decades of risk, failure, recovery, and relentless determination. Life inside the White House was fast, demanding, and filled with constant motion. Meetings began early and lasted deep into the night. Decisions were made under pressure, with fierce debates, opinions, and challenges from every direction. Trump approached the presidency like a battlefield, and like every battlefield he had faced, he moved forward with directness, boldness, and an unshakable belief in his ability to navigate chaos. The media covered him every hour, sometimes positive, often negative, and occasionally explosive. Trump had always thrived in noise, and now noise surrounded him like a storm that never rested. His responses were sharp, his presence constant. He spoke to the country in ways no president had before, sometimes praised, sometimes criticized, but always watched by millions. Every day brought new battles internationally, economically, socially, and personally. Some moments were victories, some were controversies, some were storms that shook the entire world. But through all of it, Trump pushed forward with the same energy he used when rebuilding crumbling buildings and reviving broken businesses. He treated challenges like another negotiation, another construction project, another opportunity to prove that he would not bend to pressure. Inside the White House, people learned quickly that Trump hated standing still. He always wanted motion, plan, strategy, results. Every meeting was intense, filled with questions and decisions. He expected quick answers and strong confidence. He believed that hesitation was weakness, and that momentum was the lifeline of leadership. And so his team adjusted, moving faster, sharper, and harder than they ever had before. But the presidency was not just about meetings or headlines, it was also a test of endurance. And Trump had endurance built into his bones from years of surviving business storms. He understood stress, he understood pressure, and he knew how to move through chaos without losing direction. The office demanded every ounce of strength, and he gave it willingly. And as time went on, America continued to watch every triumph, every mistake, every decision, every statement. The presidency became another chapter in his unpredictable and extraordinary life, a chapter filled with intense conflict, massive attention, and constant change. Yet through all the noise, Trump remained the same man at his core, the man who had walked into Manhattan with nothing but determination, the man who rebuilt his empire when the world counted him out, the man who believed he could climb any mountain, no matter how steep. But like every chapter in his life, this one too would bring dramatic turns, moments of sharp tension and moments of incredible significance, and Trump would face them all head on, just as he always had. Trump walked back into his office with a new fire in his eyes. He looked at the empty desks, the silent phones, the stacks of unpaid bills, and instead of feeling defeated, he felt something dangerous and powerful. He felt unstoppable. He told himself that if he could survive this storm, he could survive anything in life, and this belief became the engine that pushed him forward every single day. He began rewiring his entire company from the ground up. He created new plans, new pitches, new goals. He worked through the night, rewriting deals, rethinking strategies, and reminding himself again and again that the world only remembers the people who refuse to quit. He called meeting after meeting, pushing his team to think bigger, to think differently, to think without fear. He kept saying, "We are not done until when we are not finished, until every single door opens for us." And even when his team grew tired, he kept going. He carried the entire energy of the room on his shoulders. He made them believe that something massive was coming, something worth fighting for, worth losing sleep over, worth betting everything on. And slowly, the momentum returned. One morning, he walked into a half-finished building project that had nearly cost him everything. The workers paused, looking at him with uncertainty, wondering if the project would be canceled, wondering if their jobs were gone, wondering if the dream had died. But Trump stood before them and said, "We finish what we start." That sentence alone brought hope back into the building. He walked the site floor by floor, examining every steel beam, every concrete wall, imagining how the final structure would rise into the sky. He believed in it, even if nobody else did. Day after day, the building took shape. The investors who once backed out began calling again. The banks that once doubted him started to reconsider. The same newspapers that predicted his downfall now watched him with curiosity, as if waiting to see if he would pull off the impossible one more time. And he did because he never stopped pushing, he never stopped moving, he never stopped believing. As the windows were installed and the top floors climbed higher than anyone expected, Trump stood on the rooftop staring at the New York skyline, feeling the wind hit his face. And he realized this moment was not just about money or buildings or success. It was about proving to himself that he was stronger than failure, stronger than fear, stronger than the world telling him no. And when the building finally opened, it was more than a structure. It was a message to everyone who had doubted him, a message that said, you cannot stop someone who refuses to stop, you cannot break someone who refuses to bend, you cannot end someone who builds even when everything around him is falling apart. This victory pushed him into a new level of confidence. Deals grew bigger, projects expanded, opportunities appeared everywhere. People began recognizing him not just as a businessman, but as a force, someone who could rise from the ashes again and again, someone who walked straight into storms and came out even stronger. But deep down, Trump knew something important. He knew that success was not permanent. He knew that another storm would one day come, another challenge, another risk, another failure waiting somewhere in the future. But he also knew that he had built himself into the kind of person who could take the hit and keep moving forward, who could lose everything and still rise back, who could see the entire world fall apart and still rebuild from nothing. And this belief stayed with him as he prepared for the next chapter, the next gamble, the next war, the next mountain he would climb, because he was not finished, he was only getting started. Trump stood in his office years later, looking out over the skyline that once felt like an impossible dream. He remembered every moment of struggle, every fear, every loss, every night. He thought everything was over, and he smiled because he had survived it all. He realized that every setback had shaped him, every failure had sharpened him, every fall had taught him how to rise higher than before. He had been knocked down by debt, by doubt, by people who wanted him to disappear, but he refused to give up. He refused to let the world decide his destiny. He kept moving, kept building, kept believing, even when no one else did. He walked through the halls of his company, seeing the photographs of the buildings he had once fought for, the buildings that almost destroyed him and yet somehow saved him, because each one reminded him that the only way to truly lose is to quit. And he never quit, not once. He remembered the banks refusing him, the newspapers laughing at him, the critics predicting his end. And he felt no anger, only pride, pride that he had pushed through when others would have walked away, pride that he turned every closed door into a new path, pride that he became the kind of man who could take the hardest hits life threw at him and still keep going. One evening, he stood on the balcony watching the city lights glow like stars spread across the earth. He felt the wind and thought about the boy he once was, the boy who grew up in Queens with big dreams and bigger determination, the boy who believed that success was built not from luck, but from courage and the willingness to fight for what you want even when everyone says you cannot have it. He realized he had honored that boy. He had lived the life he dreamed. He had created something bigger than money or fame. He had created a legacy of relentless willpower. As the night grew darker, he whispered to himself that the true measure of a person is not where they start or how many times they fall, but how many times they rise. One evening, he stood on the balcony watching the city lights glow like stars spread across the earth. He felt the wind and thought about the boy he once was, the boy who grew up in Queens with big dreams and bigger determination, the boy who believed that success was built not from luck, but from courage and the willingness to fight for what you want even when everyone says you cannot have it. He realized he had honored that boy. He had lived the life he dreamed. He had created something bigger than money or fame. He had created a legacy of relentless willpower. As the night grew darker, he whispered to himself that the true measure of a person is not where they start or how many times they fall, but how many times they rise again. He knew he had risen more times than most, and each rise had taken him closer to who he was meant to be. He felt grateful for the battles, because they made him strong, grateful for the failures, because they taught him how to rebuild, grateful even for the moments of doubt, because they pushed him to prove himself all over again. Trump walked back inside, closed the door behind him, and felt a deep calm settle in his chest. He knew his story was far from perfect, but it was real and powerful and unbreakable. It was the story of a man who refused to surrender, a man who built his own future brick by brick, deal by deal, step by step, a man who showed that you can lose everything and still come back stronger than ever if you have the heart to keep going. And that was his truth, his journey, his message to the world, that no matter how hard life hits you, no matter how loud the world doubts you, no matter how many times you fall, you can rise again and again And again, until your dream stands tall like a skyscraper against the sky. And in that moment, Trump knew that his greatest victory was not a building, not a deal, not a headline, but the simple, powerful fact that he never gave up. And that was the end of his early life story, the rise of a man who refused to be defeated.